Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Big Sci-Fi podcast in between season shorts. Right now, we're in between our seasons 5 and 6, and we're reading flash fiction stories that each one of us wrote based on 4 elements that we all agreed to. So hopefully you've caught a couple of them so far. And before we move on to our next one, just really make sure you hit that like button, do the liking, subscribing, all the things here on YouTube or wherever your favorite social media is, because we're everywhere. Now, the elements that we are incorporating into an 1,000-word flash fiction story include opening day, sticker, corvette, and self-sealing stem bolt. All that mushed into one flash fiction story. And we have Brian up next to read us his. Brian, you ready?
I'm so ready. I can't stand it.
Okay.
Then
Brian,
sit
take it
down.
away.
I hope you guys are sitting down. Gather around,
Yes.
boys and girls, around Uncle Brian for a story called Corvette.
Okay.
Corvette stood quietly at the base of the launch pad and stared upward at the enormous structure. From her perspective, this was the most exciting moment in the history of her homeworld, known simply as Chavry to its inhabitants. The object before her represented the highest level of technology and engineering achievable. It had been designed and built by the brightest minds on their planet. It was hoped that this great machine would allow intrepid scientists to discover new worlds and perhaps the inhabitants of those worlds. She sighed, took a step backward, and craned her neck to see the very top of the massive vessel before her. Wow, she said to herself, it's bigger than I imagined. This historic day had been dubbed Opening Day, as the inhabitants of Chavry were embarking on an endeavor that would open up the galaxy to their exploration. They were seeking knowledge and understanding of their place in the cosmos. Someone tapped her on the shoulder. She turned around to find her best friend smiling at her with a grin that exuberantly displayed his great joy. He embraced Corvette with an equally enthusiastic hug. She didn't even have time to wrap her own arms around him. Can you believe it? He said. It's really happening tomorrow. Katich released her and grabbed her shoulders tightly. The most historic and exciting day in our history is here, and we get to be a part of it. Katich was a couple years younger than Corvette, but of similar height. He had the most beautiful black hair she had ever seen. In fact, she used to be jealous of it until the year of the Great Purge. The inhabitants of Chavry had struggled with the few emotions that threatened the peace and livelihood of their civilization. After realizing the danger that loomed in front of them, they endeavored to create mental exercises that would allow them to purge the negative emotions they were threatened by. The most troubling of those emotions were greed, fear, and jealousy. Now she looked at her best friend with simple appreciation. She also noticed that he had an unusual item on his uniform. It was an unusually thick sticker that featured the symbol of the object before them. She smiled and said, "What are you doing wearing that thing on your uniform? Who are you trying to impress?" He sheepishly looked down at the sticker, pressed a button on the top right corner of its surface, which released it from his clothing. He held it in his hands like it was a precious jewel or even a youngling. "Hey," he said, "I'm very proud of my invention." "As you should be. Without it, we might not be ready to explore the cosmos." She leaned in closer to whisper in his ear, "But how did you get one? I thought they were being manufactured solely by you know who." "I have my contacts," he said. She shrugged back, shoved him lightly in the chest, and replied, "You better not. You know how dangerous that is." "Come on, Corvette," he said. "You know me. I'm nothing if not obsessively careful." She shook her head in disapproval. "Still, I don't like it. What if they catch you with this?" "Then," he replied, I don't know what I'll actually do." "Sheesh," responded Corvette. "What am I going to do if my best friend is sent off to be renewed? I mean, they can wipe your memory completely away, especially if they believe you haven't been purged of greed or one of the other majors." Katich looked at his friend, crossed his arms, and looked at the self-sealing stem bolt in his hand. This object was the key to unlocking safe travel off the planet Chavry. Katich himself had solved the problem of safely securing the engines to the vessel that would carry actual inhabitants of their world towards other worlds. Dozens of attempts had been made with disastrous results. The engines could never be secured tightly enough, and when they became unstable, they would vibrate and violently break off and explode in the process. The self-sealing stem boat was the answer to this issue and several others. It accelerated the space program forward by years in only a few short months. Katich had become a legend and hero. His sticker was so strong that they applied the alternate term to it of bolt. It was not a bolt per se. It was indeed a sticker with a self-sealing button that, when activated, could not be torn away from the surface it was attached to. Corvette realized the mood had changed in their conversation, yet they were supposed to be jubilant and happy at this momentous occasion. She broke them out of their pattern of focus, something the purge had taught her to do, and said, "Let's go grab a bite to eat before lunch." Sounds like a brilliant idea, but he hesitated for a moment and then added, "Why don't you go and get us a table? I just want to soak in the moment. I'll be along shortly." Corvette looked at her friend through squinted and slightly suspicious eyes. Suspicion was not an emotion expunged by the purge. "Okay," she said, "but don't take too long." "I won't," said Katich. He looked at the vessel and then down at the self-sealing stem boat in his hand. "I can't let them do this," he said to himself as Corvette walked away. "This is wrong." He reached into his hip pocket and pulled out a small device that would allow him to set a timer and activate the bomb that was hidden inside of the bolt. The explosion would be catastrophic. "For the purge," he said audibly beneath his breath. He placed the explosive at the base of the massive vessel, set the timer, and quietly walked away to have lunch with his friend. This was the day the revolution of Chivri began. The end.
Ooh, I want more.
Brian, that was so good. You had me, and then you surprised me with the ending. I thought, this is a great story. I mean, he's a hero. He's the savior. He's the great. No, he's a terrorist. Oh,
Freedom
my.
fighter.
Is he?
So I'm going to say something that I've heard many times about some of my stories from a while ago. Is that sounds like chapter 1 or possibly the beginning of the bigger story.
Yeah. I'm very interested in continuing it. And I was surprised at where I kind of, I was just thinking fun exploration. And then I'm like, what if I throw some intrigue? What if this guy, with the purge and that? And so the whole point is what needs to be fleshed out is what was the purge actually? And apparently it was oppressive, abusive to a certain group of people, at least, that did not appreciate that. And so hence this revolution and all that stuff. So
the revolution will not be televised. It will be live.
Oh, I'm glad you guys liked it.
Yeah, that's cool.
I really
Awesome.
did, Brian.
Hear more
Thank
of
you.
that universe.
That was super. I want to know more about these characters. That's what really is intriguing. So please
Cool.
write chapter 2. That sounds great.
Okay. I'll do that.
Okay. Well, thank you, Brian. That was awesome, of course. And thank you, listeners, for listening and watching. We really hope you enjoyed that. So feel free to comment. We want to know what you think. Tell us what you think. Please tell us what you think. And then join us for our next flash fiction story here on the Big Sci-Fi Podcast.